All right, everyone, welcome to our fellowship info session. If you've been to our info sessions before, you may know and recognize me. Here I am, Amanda, Senior Director of the MLH Fellowship, and joining me on stream today, I'm going to add him right now, is my colleague Omar, who works on our admissions team.
Hey everyone, happy to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. I want to, for those of you who are new to MLH or to our info sessions or what have you, I want to very quickly introduce us and then talk a little bit about what we're gonna do in our session today. So as you've probably figured out, my name is Amanda. I am a senior director here for the MLH Fellowship, primarily in charge of essentially the fellow experience, which includes things like our marketing, our events, our admissions process, and so on. Before I worked at MLH, I ran an admissions program at a coding boot camp here in the U.S. called Flatiron School. Did that for about 6 years and have been in education for my entire career, which I will not mention how many years that is because it is many. When I'm not running admissions teams, I'm a giant nerd about all kinds of things and a passionate cat mom, as I'm sure you can see there. I provide a picture of them for you because they are adorable. But after you enjoy that, please enjoy Omar introducing himself. Omar, will you talk through what you're all about?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Amanda. Hey everyone. As you figured, my name is Omar. I'm part of the admissions team here at MLH, and before that, I was a participant as a past fellow in the fellowship. I joined the open source track in the summer of 2021, and ever since then, MLH has been a great part of my life. Other than that, I'm really passionate about backend development, and this is what I'm doing professionally. And I'm a big Potterhead. I'm a big fan of Harry Potter and anything that's related to it. And one of the things that give me joy in life is just rambling by the Nile here in Egypt. And this is a recent photo that I took from my latest stroll there. So yeah, back
Jeez.
to you, Amanda.
That is a gorgeous shot. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Um, oh, now we're gonna have sad Harry Potter chat in the chat, everybody. I don't know what I'm gonna do, but you're right. Yeah, R.I.P. Hagrid. My goodness. Alrighty. Oops. So let me just very quickly walk you through what we're gonna accomplish in today's session, and it's really focused on helping you all become the strongest applicants to the fellowship that you can possibly be. We know we have a long admissions process. We know it can feel kind of confusing, like how do these pieces work and how does this all fit together? And so the goal of this session is to really help demystify some of that and help you all become the best applicants you can possibly be. We'll start with a little background on the fellowship, and then we'll go into how to write a fantastic application, focusing I'll focus on the essay portion of the application, and then Omar will return and walk us through how to come up with a great code sample. So that's what's coming down the pipe. Omar, if it's cool with you, I'm gonna take it from here, and he will be back when we're ready to talk about the code sample.
Yeah, see you later, guys.
Awesome. Alrighty, so let's dive right into it. Um, the fellowship was born, for those of you who are just learning about it. The fellowship was really born out of a need to connect early career developers with career opportunities. And when we say early career developers, we mean folks like all of you in the chat, folks like all of you who are watching, right? You know, folks who are trying to get their foot in the door for a technical career. Excuse me, swallowed wrong. Just starting to gain some practical experience. Maybe you're getting close to graduating from university or already have. Maybe you're a career changer who's just starting to put your feet in the world of coding. We realized that, our hackathon community was full of people who were getting their start in tech. And every single one of those people could benefit from a bridge to practical experience that ultimately makes them a stronger developer and ultimately helps them build their careers. And the goal of the fellowship in general is to give you a really deep concentrated learning experience. So the fellowship is a 12-week remote internship alternative that has you working on production level code and making open source contributions the entire time, so that when you graduate, you walk away with a ton of practical experience. You have built a network of both people who are at roughly the same level as you, but also maintainers and mentors and professional developers who you're working alongside with. In many cases, you can earn academic credit for being a fellow, so you walk away with that too. And in many cases, you could even walk away with a job offer, whether that be full time or internship. So the goal of the fellowship is to really connect people to opportunities in technology. And as I like to say when I'm describing what I do, the fellowship is a place where technical knowledge meets practical application. You know the thing, but how do you show people that you can do the thing, right? And that's what the fellowship is really all about. So, fellowship has been around since 2020. To date, we've merged over 1,000 pull requests for our partners. We have, actually, I think this number doesn't include our current class. It's over 900, possibly over 1,000 alumni at this point. Many partners, many different batches, tons of success coming out of these programs. So I'm one of the many reasons I'm excited to come to work every day is that we're building opportunities for people to work in this space. Let's talk just a little bit about what you can expect if you are to become a fellow. I imagine that's what many of you are here for, right? I want to write a good application so I can get into the fellowship, so I can get a good an outcome for myself. Something, I want to build my skills. I want to gain job opportunities and whatnot. By the way, I'm loving the chat right now. It's absolutely lit with people talking about the things that they've learned, and honestly giving a lot of props to Omar for being their interviewer, giving them advice. So yeah, we are here to share. We are here to share ideas, and then maybe you too can someday see the success that, for example, Annie here saw. She was a fellow of ours in the middle of 2021, if I'm not mistaken. She was matched onto a Meta project where she got to do her very first open source project work. She got to work with, as she says here, a network of people. She'd never had to read and work on other people's code before, or work in that kind of team environment. And so she was a fellow, and by being a fellow and being able to talk about the things that she learned in this program, she ended up applying to a bunch of different jobs and had 22 interviews in 2 months, which just goes to show the kind of cachet and the kind of success you can see coming out of a program like this. Employers are looking at it. You're building the kind of skills that engineering managers really look for and really need on their teams. Similar examples here, right? We have fellows that have gotten various software engineering roles, site reliability engineering roles, and many people talking about how I was able to talk about this in my interview. I was able to put this on my resume. It really showcased. I was looking for ways to show my knowledge, show what I'm capable of, and the fellowship allowed me to do that. So that is just why we're all here, right? This is why we run this program, is to help people get these kinds of outcomes for themselves. So before we get into specifics on how to write a great application, I wanted to give everybody a little talk through of what we have in store for the fellowship in 2023. Right now, applications are open for our spring and summer semesters of the fellowship. And so if you're starting to think about applying, now is an absolutely fantastic time to be doing so. You're right in the sweet spot to apply to the spring, and you're early even to apply to the summer. So if you're thinking about it, now's a great time. Let's talk about what the program is going to look like in 2023. So for those of you who have been around the fellowship space for a little while, you'll know that we've had a bunch of different programs over the years. We had an open source track, then we had a software engineering track that was somehow different than the open source track, and everyone would ask us, how are they different? We're like, I don't actually know. It turns out they weren't that different, so we made them the same track. We had production engineering for a while, which became site reliability engineering, and we also introduced Web3 engineering. I'm seeing some questions in the chat about whether or not the session is recorded. Yes, and it is going to go up on YouTube within probably a day or so. So when we send out a thank you email at the end of this, we will also send you a link to the video version of this talk, just FYI. But yeah, so for 2023, we are planning to have our 3 signature tracks. First is site reliability engineering, which you may be familiar with as production engineering. We've talked about it using that terminology previously, but site reliability engineering is really more the industry term. Or more people would refer to it as site reliability engineering. This is DevOps. This is keeping systems running at scale. This is being the person who has to have the pager so that when Google Maps goes down, you have to get on the line and figure out how to bring it back up. When Slack goes down, which completely blows up my workday whenever it happens, and it happens at least twice a year, the people who are called to make that to get that fix and to make that work for all of those users and save all of that value, site reliability engineers. We have a couple different partners in our site reliability track. Google is our active partner right now. We've also worked with Meta in the past, and we've worked with a number of different organizations to sponsor the site reliability engineering track. Of course, we have our signature track, software engineering, tried and true, contribute to open source projects from a variety of different key tech companies, everyone from Amazon to GitHub to Facebook to smaller companies like Bento ML and places like that have sponsored our software engineering track. Runs the gamut in terms of the kinds of technologies you can be building, whether you're interested in front end or back end. There's likely a project in software engineering that would appeal to you. And then last but not least, our newest track is our Web3 engineering track, which is all about learning to build on the blockchain and figure out how to find your place in this emerging technological space. Solana is our primary partner in Web3. And what's interesting about Solana is that they sort of manage their Solana blockchain, but there are also a ton of partner companies that have built on top of that. And so it's not just that you're working for Solana. We have Solana partner companies that are, we had one this semester that is working on a blockchain video game. We had a couple of like fintech companies that are trying to work on their systems. We have all kinds of different apps and technologies. So you're building on the blockchain, yes, but you're building all kinds of different software connected to it. So it's not one thing. It's not just crypto, though. Some of it is crypto. It's not only that. It's really just exciting and innovative work that you can do. So if that is something that interests you, please feel free to apply to our Web3 engineering track. And since everybody always has a ton of questions about what's coming up and when should I apply and all of that, I like to get that over with at the start of the presentation so that everybody has these answers. Today is our October info session. Welcome. Our next, technically our next start date is our prep class, which is starting in November, though that class is pretty full at this point. If you're applying now, you're most likely applying to any of our spring start dates. The main spring fellowship, the 12-week fellowship, is going to start on the 30th of January. And then we have a couple of prep courses that we're running in the spring. We have one in March and one in April. I really want to highlight here that though it seems like January 30th is a long time from now, I've run the numbers a bunch of different times, and I can tell you that the people who get, like, by the time we hit November 30th, which is 2 months before the program is set to begin, half of the class is typically already full. We have already received applications from about half of the people who are ultimately going to get in. So your best chance is to apply early. Give yourself tons of time to make it through the admissions process. If you know you want to apply, don't wait until January. If you do, it's more and more likely that we're going to come back to you and say, sorry, our spring class is full. How do you feel about the summer? And if that's not what you're looking for, that can feel really disappointing. So please, please, please don't wait. We're going to give you a ton of really valuable tips and tricks as to how to apply and make your application look really great. And hopefully we have you in the process before November 30th. All of the tracks that I just described will be available for the spring semester. You can apply to 1, 2, or all 3 of them, whatever you like. And we'll start matching folks to projects in those tracks by December. So you'll finish your application process. At that point, we will know what the projects are that we're matching for in the spring semester, and we'll start to make those matches. Which brings up a really, really good question, which is, what the heck is matching? This is a question I've gotten more and more as time goes by. It's like, well, wait, I made it through the entire admissions process. I passed my phone screen, I pass my technical interview, my code sample looks great, my essays look great because I listened to Amanda and Omar in that info session. Why is it taking so long for them to get me an answer? When do I get to know that I'm in this program? Well, what the heck is matching anyway? I want to take you guys through it just so we're all on the same page as to how this works. So you all, as potential fellows, you have a variety of different um, preferences and details about you and yourself that you prefer when you apply, right? So everybody lives in slightly different time zone, right? When I was looking at where everybody's located, we have people in India, we have people in Nigeria, we have people in Texas, we have people in Chile, right? Like there's people all over the world. If you live in Chile and there's a project that the maintainer lives in India, we're going to need to figure out some time zone business to make that work, right? So you may have time zone preferences. You may also, everybody's working on a slightly different visa schedule, right? Especially if you're living in a country that isn't your home country. How much are you allowed to even do a program like this? That's something you need to figure out. What are your developer interests, right? We've had people say, yes, I have a lot of experience on front end, but I applied to this program so that I could get some experience in back end. That's what I'm interested in. Everybody comes in with a slightly different set of programming languages that they enjoy and want to work on. And everybody also comes in a slightly different place in their job search, right? I bet there are some people in the chat right now who are graduating seniors, class of 2023. And I bet there are other people in the chat right now who are rising sophomores, right? And are way far away from even thinking about that job search. And I bet there are some people in the chat who have already graduated and are actively in the job market right now. And for them, getting that job is the most important priority, right? So the admissions team looks at your application and looks at all of these things, all of these qualities about you as an applicant. And then what we're doing is we're matching them to good fit partners that want the same things, right? So for instance, we talked about this. If depending on your time zone, you will want to be matched to a project where the maintainer can actually meet with you, that there's sort of, quote unquote, shared daylight between the two of you so you can actually talk. If you are interested in getting hired at the end of the program, we need to make sure we're matching you to a partner that plans to hire, right? If you are in fact interested in a specific kind of technology or you have a specific interest, we want to find you a partner in a project that speaks to that specialization. We need to make sure that we're matching you to a partner who has available issues that can be worked on in your primary programming languages. The example I always use is you could be the world's best Fortran developer, but if we don't have any partners who are developing on Fortran right now, it's going to be really hard to find you a project match. So we've got to be able to make that match as well. And we're looking at, if a fellow is immediately job seeking, do we have partners who are immediately hiring? All of these things together make a match. So it is in fact possible to be a fantastic applicant and have a ton of great skills, but not necessarily there may not necessarily be a project in any given semester that would be a good fit for you. A success story that I want to share about this is that we had an applicant back in for spring of this year, I believe. I think he first applied in the spring. Passionate mobile developer, passionate, really loved developing in Swift and Objective-C and things like that. Really wanted to build mobile apps. And for 2 semesters, absolutely fantastic applicant. I kept telling him, I'm sorry, I don't have any mobile development projects for you. I just don't have anything that will work for your skill set. He was disappointed, but he understood. And then finally, I was able to send him an email for this last semester, the one that just started. I sent him an email and I said, you're in luck. There's a really fantastic iOS project coming in the fall. I have your name right in front of me as like someone who's deeply passionate about this. Are you free? Would you like to join? And he was over the moon, and he's a fellow in the program. And so it just goes to show that, what we're really trying to do here is we're trying to find a balance between what you want and what you're passionate about and what our partners and our projects are looking for. So we'll get into this in a second, but the more you can tell us about that and the more you can help us understand what you're passionate about in your application, the more likely it is we're going to be able to make that match for you. I hope that helped. And I see Way in the chat answering questions. I see a bunch of folks in the chat answering questions. Thank you so much. We will have Q&A at the end, and I'll circle back to some of those questions. But so far, doing a great job. So let's get into it then. How do we make our application stand out? How do we become that person who is selected and who is matched to one of these projects? I want to take us through the very first part of the process, which is filling out the application and writing up your essays. So one of the most common questions that I get, and many of you in the chat have either already applied or are familiar with our application process, but just in case you're not, if you go to our website and click on apply, the first parts of our application ask you for like your name and your email and your LinkedIn and all of that, but then it's going to ask you to answer a number of essay questions. Why are you excited about the fellowship? What gets you passionate about technology? What are you excited to share with with people in the program? So on and so forth. And the number one question I get about this is why? Why do we make you write essays? You're engineers, right? You're not English majors. Well, maybe some of you are English majors, but you're applying to this program because you want to build your engineering skills. Why do we have essays? The primary reason sort of speaks for itself in some of these numbers. Just this year alone, we ran 3 semesters of the fellowship, spring, summer, and fall. On average, we get about 3,000 applications per semester. Summer's a little bigger, spring's a little smaller, but on average, it's about 3,000. And our average number of seats per semester is about 130. So you start to do the math and you start to realize, like, oh, if I'm going to rise to the top of the pack here, I have to give MLH some information about myself to be one of those 130 people. They're looking for me to tell them who I am and why I would be a good fit for this program, because you're going up against literally thousands of other folks. We want to hear about you, the things about you that are personal, unique, relevant, and indicate your interest, indicate your passion. As we just talked about on the previous slide, those are the things that will get you matched, because that's what makes you unique and different throughout all of those 3,000 applications. So with that said, I want to take you through a couple of just like basic best practices for writing a good application essay. The first one is answer the question that you're being asked. I cannot tell you how many times I open up an application to read it, and the question is, why do you want to be an MLH fellow? And the answer is very clearly somebody's cover letter from the last time they applied to a job, just cut and pasted into the text. It's like, I think I would be a great fit at this job because I am a good team player. It's like, well, wait, hang on. That's not what we asked you. We asked you something entirely different than that. So please, 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 this is basic stuff, but you'd be surprised how often it happens. Address the question asked and make sure that you're, giving us that level of detail. Also, this is again pretty self-explanatory, but you'd be surprised. The essay should be yours, in your own words, sharing what's unique about you. I never thought I'd say this, but we have in fact found essays that are plagiarized from blog posts or even from the MLH website. We have found people who just take text from the website, highlight it, copy paste, drop it in the I don't know if they think there's like a bot that's like reading for the words or something. There is not a bot. The person who is reading the applications is me and Omar and a couple of other people. And we know when you've used the MLH text because we read it all the time. So please, please, please don't waste your own time or hours for doing that. This is actual footage of Omar actively disqualifying someone who we found out plagiarized their essay. Don't make him do that. Don't be that guy or that girl, please. So let's talk about what we mean by detailed and specific essays. So I'm sharing this example because I think it has a lot of the like just, though it's not a very long essay, it has some really great pieces in there that I want to call out. So first of all, this person is talking about how they're looking for opportunities to gain industry experience that will help me in my job search. So this person knows what this program is designed to do and what they're likely to get out of it at the end of the day. They've done their research. That's good to know. They also share some very specific and unique things that they've done. I volunteer with Mums Who Code as a front end web developer facilitator, an opportunity that enables me to teach programming, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's unique. I'd never heard about that before. If I'm reading this essay, I'm curious. I'm like, I never heard of Mums Who Code. I'm curious. Let me go like Google that. You've piqued my interest. This person also goes into some specific things that they've learned and actions that they've taken to try to grow themselves to be ready for the fellowship. That's really exciting to see. And I just want to highlight again, it's not that long. You like, I think a lot of people see an open structured essay and are like, oh my god, I write enough papers for university, like why do I have to do this? This is crazy. This is a couple of short paragraphs and we got a ton of information about this person. I'm so excited to potentially talk to this person because we have so much to talk about. They shared so much about themselves. Related to that is, show your excitement and enthusiasm for something, right? And by that I mean, I think a lot of people think that a good essay is talking about how excited they are about MLH. I've been to this many hackathons, I've did this many projects. That's fantastic, but you don't necessarily need that to be a strong applicant. I'm seeing some chatter in chat about like how do I do this when I'm still sort of like a young developer, or I haven't been to that many hackathons, etc. That's entirely okay. What we are looking for is not specifically that you are super, super dedicated to MLH or the hackathon community or what have you. It doesn't hurt. But what we want to see is your passion and your excitement for something, right? What's the last thing you learned that you thought was really cool? What's a piece of technology that you really want to learn more about, or that you took it upon yourself to learn more about, and that really lit you up? Maybe you have been to a hackathon. Tell us about that. What was the experience like? Who was your team and why was it so fun? Share, as I'm sure you've seen before, people's excitement is contagious. If you are excited about this opportunity and if you can tell us why, we're excited to talk to you, right? So the more you can get that across for us, the more likely it is your application is going to rise to the top. And I also want to point out here in this third paragraph, this person is very clearly passionate about design, and they don't have a design degree, right? They're not traditionally trained, sort of classically trained, if you will, necessarily. They don't have the letters behind their name necessarily, but they obviously are excited about this, and this is something that they've taken it upon themselves to learn and get better at. That is, you love to see it, right? Absolutely, chef's kiss. I love seeing anybody who's done stuff like that. I want to talk to them. I want to get to know them better. I think they'd be an amazing fit for the program. And everyone has something. If you're sitting there and you're going, I don't have an example like that, I bet you there's something you're excited about. Everybody has something. Some bonus tips to really wow the person who's going to be reading your essay. Attention to detail is incredibly valuable. This person's telling us not just that they had an internship and won an award, but they told us exactly which internship, where, which award, what projects have they contributed to. Like, they're filling us up with all of their experiences. That helps us understand somebody's passionate about Blahaj. If somebody writes an essay about their passion for Blahaj, you will go down in history. You will be an MLH Fellowship legend. I bought my first Blahaj like 3 weeks ago. He lives in my bedroom now. I'm so pleased. He was sold out for such a long time. Anyway, attention to detail. Growth mindset is a big one for those of you who are thank you. I bet you're going to do it. I can't wait to see it. Growth mindset, this idea that like, I'm coming into this program to learn. I know this is a learning opportunity, so I want to take advantage of that. I know I'm not yet a perfect programmer. Nobody is. Part of my wanting to join this is about getting better and bringing out, as this person says, bringing out my potential. And then lastly, a teamwork focus is a huge part of the fellowship. Almost everything you're doing is done in teams or small groups. But being able to tell us about that in your essays, why you enjoy working with people, who was a great team of people that you worked with, this person sharing the story of the team they worked with at a hackathon that they went to. What a fantastic example. And it tells us you already know how to work with other people and how to get something done. So yeah, these are the big tips that I have. By the way, I'm seeing some questions in the chat about, are we going to get these tips, are we going to get these slides? Absolutely. I'll say this again at the end of the session, so apologies for repeating myself. But in about maybe like 2 business days, you'll get an email from us with these slides, the link to the recording, and a couple of other valuable links that we'll talk about in a couple of minutes. So absolutely, yes, you will get all of this information. Cool. All right. Well, you've heard me go on and on and on for like, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes. Let's get a different face up here. Omar is going to walk you through how we look at code samples.
Yeah, hello again, everyone. So I've been doing admissions work for almost a year now, and most of the interviews that I've conducted, the questions that I usually get are regarding the code sample. Like, what do we consider as a proper code sample, and what actually is considered a something that's going to have a positive feedback from our end. So hopefully, this part of the presentation will act as a centralized piece of information regarding these questions. And yeah, let's get started. So, what do we consider as a code sample? This might be obvious for some people, but we consider a code sample to be an application or a part of application that aims to solve a real life problem. And the word problem here is vague on purpose because we want to define this problem as anything from creating a game that you can play with your friends or your family members to creating a software package that's going to be used by millions of users. So yeah, and obviously, as I mentioned here, the problem or the thing that you're going to be creating needs to be accessible by our reviewers and by the public. So it should be an open source project that can be seen by other people, and it should be hosted on one of the hosting services that support version history, like GitHub or GitLab. Uh, Obviously, as Amanda mentioned, for the essays, the submission should be yours as well, and you shouldn't be plagiarizing your code from somewhere else, or it shouldn't be a tutorial-based project. It shouldn't also be a breakthrough or something that's groundbreaking. We're only looking for originality and your own ability of coding and solving problems using your technical skills. So, Amanda, if you can move on to the other slide. Okay, so here we're going to talk you through some of the best practices in order to have a good or a positive feedback on your code sample and to make your reviewer pleased in general. Um, your code sample should be fairly complex, and this is only to enable having a proper discussion about the code sample that you're submitting. This is tightly coupled for the first point that we talked about, that it should be an application, because if your application or your code sample, if it's addressing some problem, it's easier to have a discussion about it, and it's easier to convey your ideas and how you couple your ideas to actually writing code. So some examples of these are building backend APIs, software development kits, websites, applications of all the types. Some of the examples that we don't consider as a proper code sample is uh, just submitting some solutions for lead code problems, or implementing like random algorithms, things that don't really provide a coherent context for your code sample. This is not usually considered as a proper code sample from our end, and in most of the cases, this is going to be rejected. So if we move on to the next point here, and one of the most important points to actually convey your ability that you can express yourself through your code is being able to actually describe your implementation in words. And this is going to be your documentation, how you properly describe what you've built, and documentation for your future self and for the other developers who will be contributing to your code sample. So some of the things that are really beneficial to add in your documentation are adding a table of contents, which makes your documentation easy to skim and easy to navigate. Having a project overview and a motivation behind its implementation, giving the problem statement, what you're trying to solve using your code. and a getting started guide. And you can look at this in the different ways based on the complexity and the scope of your application. Of course, you can have two types of users: the users that will be using your code sample or your application to build upon for their own purposes. So, for example, if you're developing a software package or a library, and people will be importing your library just to enhance their application that they were working on. So you should be giving them the installation prerequisites and the guides in order to help them run your application locally. And it will be really helpful to give them also a demo of how you run the application and what are the expected outputs of the interactions that they might have with your application. The other types of users that may be using your application are developers or open source contributors. So you should also have those in mind. And adding a further development section or a contribution guidelines for those people is also really helpful and will enrich your documentation. If you've used any resources, online resources or offline resources, it's ethical and it's really important to add acknowledgement to these resources and to point people to the links for these resources if they're online. One final tip on this front is to add pictures, add visual illustrations whenever possible. This can be really helpful if your application is really complex and it involves different components that interact with each other. It would be really helpful just to add some boxes and arrows to show the relationships between the different components rather than just explaining the what the application does in text. Yeah, that will move us to the next point here, which is the structure of your code sample. So it's really important to modularize your code sample in a logical structure. Uh, the contributor or the person who's going to be contributing to your code sample shouldn't be aware of the overall implementation of the project in order to be able to contribute to it. So adding a logically structured code sample with proper names and descriptive names to the directories and the files that actually indicate what are the contents of these files is going to be really helpful for you, even if you're going to be developing further into your project, or for anyone else who wants to be contributing to the project. Using the conventional names for the framework that you're working with, or using the different patterns that are really common for the projects that you're working on. So, for example, if you're using a lightweight framework such as Flask or Express, those frameworks do not have a specific structure. So you can look online for the different patterns that you can use in order to structure your projects in a meaningful manner. I mean. And yeah, we discussed using descriptive names and using the naming conventions. This is really important. And also, this is going to be really important if you're going to choose to pursue tech as your career in the future, because this is one of the things that is going to be really stressed on in any professional setting. And yeah, let's now move on to the version history. One of the most important things, and one of the things that I look into when I'm reviewing a code sample, is the originality of the code sample. You should think of your version history as if it's telling the story of the development of your project. And your version history and your get history should be descriptive of what you're doing. Your commit messages should have meaning behind them, and they should be telling should be telling me as a developer or as a reviewer what has been done in that commit, without actually having to go through the actual changes that are introduced in that commit. And also, if you're using a hosting service like GitHub, for example, most of these hosting services have conventional flows that you can follow in order to make the contribution between different developers online very easy. And using this flow, like creating issues, creating pull requests, and merging those pull requests is going to be really helpful for your development, and is going to be really beneficial if you start using them, even if you're working on the project on your own. Usually, when we see a code sample or a project that's submitted to us without version history, this is going to be rejected out of the way, because we have no way to actually verify if the code sample is original. And on that front, I would advise not to submit anything that doesn't support version history. So, for example, just Replit code or code that's in CodePen, anything that doesn't really support version history will be most probably rejected out of the gate. One last step on this front is to have your code clean, readable, and secure. Uh, that means a lot of things. That means that your code shouldn't be cluttered with commented out snippets of code. If you don't need the code, you can just remove it. You can just delete it. Or if you need it for some further development, you can add it to a different branch. You should be adding inline comments to explain the vague parts of the code that are not really self-explanatory. And if you're using any kind of API keys, secrets, or any credentials of any sorts, you should be adding those to environment variables. So, for example, to a .env file, you should not commit or push these changes to your public repository because they are accessible by public now and they can use them to imitate your personality. So you should be adding this to your environment variables, and you should figure out a way to access these values without actually exposing them in the code itself. And finally, use linters, formatters, and anything that can make your code look beautiful and eye pleasing. Because at the end of the day, we're all human beings, and if you're working on a code sample that looks good, that would be also really helpful to get you started and working on the project. Finally, some bonus steps to actually wow your reviewer or impress the person who's working on the reviewing your code sample. Add testing whenever possible. If you're not familiar with testing, I would suggest that you can learn that and add just some simple unit tests to your code sample that will really verify that the project is working. Containerize your application if you can use Docker. That's always really good to do. Deploy your application whenever it's applicable. That shows us that you know that what you know what you're doing basically, and building CI/CD pipelines, and the list can go on for the things that can be impressive. So these are not really required from our end, but it would be really good to be able to apply this to your code sample. Next, we will be going through some code samples. These are actual code samples that we reviewed from candidates, and we're going to go through them to see what's good and what's not good about them. So obviously, this code sample is a strong one. The first thing that I look at when I'm reviewing code sample is the commit history. So as you can see here, there are 108 commits. That means that this code sample is rich in history. I would then go through the commit messages, see a couple of them, and see if they are descriptive. So as you can see here, some of the commit messages actually describe what's going to be done, what's going on with the actual changes in the commits. Some of them are changes to the README files, which is always fine. So yeah, I know that this person knows what they're doing, and most of the commits are verified as well. So yeah. After that, I look at the issues and the pull requests, and I can see that the person is aware of the GitHub flow. They're creating issues and they're creating pull requests and closing the pull requests, which is really good to have. After that, I would move on to the documentation. So if we scroll down a little bit, we can see that the person added some overview for the project. What are the features introduced by the project? Some snapshots for the actual functionality and what's going on in the project, and they're adding the technologies that they've used and links to these technologies. They've also added the prerequisites section and for developers who would want to build up on this, and the getting started section, which is really, really helpful. And it's really encouraging for someone who's going through this repo to be able to just install this and they can build upon this. They have also added some query examples and some responses examples, which is really helpful for anyone who wants to learn more about their project. After that, I would go into the code itself. So as you can see, the project is really structured. The folders are descriptive. They describe what they contain. So I would go into some files and see if the code is clean, if they've used the conventional way to develop in the framework that they're using. And yeah, that would be mostly what I do for a code sample. So I would like everyone in the chat to tell me what they like about this repo, and how they would review it, what they can improve upon it, and yeah, let's see what you think about it. Yeah, the docs are really great. I really like these docs, and they're really eye pleasing. They introduce a lot of information about the project without actually having to go through the code itself. Yeah, we see way here saying that we should be adding some tests. Of course, this is one of the things that would really be helpful for this repo. And yeah, if we go back to the slides, I would say that this is a really strong code sample, and this would most probably receive an interview. So this would be in my book be moved to the next stage. So if we move on to another code sample, so this is actually a code sample of mine that I've developed 2 years ago, and thank God that I didn't apply to the fellowship 2 years ago because I would have rejected myself. Um, if you can look at this code sample, for right out of the gate, there are only 4 commits. If you look at these commits, they are not really descriptive. And if you look at the documentation, it only introduces the problem statement. It doesn't introduce any kind of information about the development, about the actual software solution. If I want to run this project locally, I don't know how to, because it doesn't really give any useful information about the software solution. Rather, it just gives some information about the problem itself. Um, the file structure isn't really meaningful. Some files are named solver2.py, that indicates that there is solver1.py. Where is it? No one knows. Uh, ssr.py. I don't. I honestly don't know what this points to. I'm not sure what SSR stands for. And yeah, if we look into some of the, so if we get into the ssr.py, for example, if we get into this file, I would say some of the lines here. So look at line 17 to 19. The code is commented out. This is not really clean. If I didn't need the code at the time, I should have deleted it. I shouldn't have left it in the code itself. Or if I need it for something else, should have just created another branch. Granted, I've created some doc strings, but this doesn't really justify the naming of the variables. Some variables are just named A. What does A stand for? God only knows. And yeah, so this is an example of a really bad code sample. Um, I wouldn't really pass this one, and there are a lot of code samples that we review that really apply to this, and I wouldn't really pass something like this. So, um, people in the chat, what do you think can be improved about this? A lot of things can be improved, but what are the things that stood out to you? Yeah, versioning, 100%. Exactly, naming, adding a better README, adding proper variable names. These are all valid changes, and it would improve the code sample a lot. Um, so, yep, this would have been rejected. And again, thankfully, I didn't apply for the fellowship 2 years ago. Um, Lastly, there are some useful. These are some useful articles that will help you to read more about the things that we've discussed today. I would advise you to read them and to apply the tips that are introduced into them into your own code samples when you apply for the fellowship. The links for these will be also included in the email that Amanda will send you. And yeah, that will be all from my end. I will send back to Amanda.
All right, thank you, thank you, Omar. I saw like I was watching while you were presenting, and just all of these comments from everybody being like, "This is so helpful. This is so clear. Thank you so much." So clearly, we're hitting on something that folks definitely want to hear about, right? And perfect timing as well, because we have about 7 or 8 minutes for questions. Omar, since everybody has the code sample in mind, I'd love us to start with. Oops, not that one. I'd love us to start with this question, which I saw asked in the chat a couple of times. What does it mean when we say a code sample needs to solve a real world problem? Like, does that mean we're asking our hackers to like end world hunger, or like what does that mean to you to say that the code solves a problem?
Well, when I think about it, I think that if a code solves a problem, that means that all of the implementation of the code sample are really cohesive and they are all geared it towards solving one thing. This thing doesn't have to be a really serious thing. So, as I mentioned, it can be developing a game that you will be only playing with your friends or your siblings. It doesn't to have to be something that's innovative. It doesn't have to be something that's original that hasn't been implemented before. The only restriction on this that it has to be yours. You should be the one developing this. You shouldn't be following a tutorial, or you shouldn't be taking someone else's effort and submitting it as your own code sample.
Fantastic. Yeah. So the problem that you're solving can be I need a better, to-do list tracker for myself. I want to play tic-tac-toe online with my friends. Like it could be any problem. It just has to be a real world like expression of that problem and not just like I did some random leet code fizzbuzz stuff, here it is, right? Like no one in the actual world is solving the fizzbuzz problem, but a lot of people are looking for ways to play games with their friends online, right? So cool.
Exactly.
Cool, cool, cool. Wonderful. So, a couple of other questions that have come up. Variations on this question came up a couple of times, which is how do I get into this program if I don't have any projects to showcase? And Way, which by the way, thank goodness, thank you so much for being in chat. Way answered this, but I wanted to call out the answer aloud because I think it's so important. The best thing to do here is it sounds corny, but it's true, is sign yourself up for a hackathon or some other coding related event that's happening on your campus or in your community. You will stretch yourself to build something you may never have built before. And I think what you can tell from this presentation is that it's not about being perfect. It's about being creative and learning and explaining the work that you've done. So you do not need to, solve the world, be solving, variables of pi to like a million digits, or like creating like brand new science with the thing that you're building. It just needs to show what you can do, that you know how to write a good project, and that you can take your, remember what we said at the very top of the presentation. It's about taking your technical knowledge and finding a practical application for it. And if you've done that, even if it's as simple as a game of tic-tac-toe that runs in the command line or what have you, you have built something, you have shown us what you can do, and if you can explain it to us, so much the better. We have some more questions. This is a really easy one. Is the fellowship program remote? Yes. If I didn't say that at the top, I absolutely should have. Fellowship program is 100% remote, and it is worldwide. We've had fellows in, oh my God, I don't even know how many time zones. We've had people in New Zealand, in Singapore, in India, Africa, Europe, all up and down the Americas. I think we had one in Samoa a couple of semesters ago, which was new and kind of cool. But yeah, it is remote, it is global, and it is meant to be flexible. So don't worry about like, oh well, if I saw another question that was something about like, oh well, I have class, can I do this and also go to school? The vast majority of our fellows do exactly that. They're doing the fellowship as their like primary extracurricular thing outside of school, and then they're going to class in their other hours. The fellowship absolutely gives you the flexibility to do that. Here's another question, going back just a little bit in the agenda to when we were talking about the tracks. Are open source and software engineering just one now? The short answer is yes. The slightly longer answer is all of our tracks, so SRE and Web3 included, are powered by open source projects. So a requirement to be a project in the fellowship, to come to us and partner with us and have our fellows work on your project, is that project has to be open sourced, and that's regardless of the track. So yes, broadly speaking, if you want to think about it that way, the open source track and software engineering are basically the same thing. The longer answer is the entire program is powered by open source projects. The site reliability engineering and Web3 tracks are just a little bit more specific as to what you're going to learn. The broadest track that you can apply for is the software engineering track. And then I've got one here that maybe Omar can answer, which is, can we use our hackathon project as our code sample? Omar, how would you advise this person?
Yes, 100%. So we're advising you to join hackathons to build your experience. So it would be unfair for us to ask you not to use it. It's really helpful to use it. It will showcase your ability to work with other people on an open source project and your ability to work within a team. So yeah, 100% go for it.
Awesome, awesome. Here's a really good question. Do I require a blockchain project for the Web3 track? You do not. What we do look for, and we really do prefer, is that you are someone who expresses an interest in blockchain specifically as a technology. That can be when we're asking you to list out your interests as a developer. That can be in your essay where you say, hey, I've applied to the Web3 track because I'm really intrigued with blockchain. I'd love to work on this kind of thing or this kind of thing. So tell us why specifically you're interested in blockchain, but no, your project does not need to be blockchain specific. I will say the tech stacks that have been the most successful at getting matched to blockchain related projects in the past are anything involving TypeScript or Rust or occasionally some JavaScript. So if you want to up your chances of getting into Web3 even further, I would submit a project based in one of those three technologies because it will make things just that much easier to show us that you have a really deep understanding of the base level technology. I think we maybe have time for one more. Let's see what we have here. Here's one final question about code samples, which I'll kick over to Omar. Do code sample frame? Oh, I guess I can answer some of this too. Code sample frameworks technologies, are they dependent on the partners available? Answer here is not really. Again, we're looking more for your overall technical proficiency and not that you've used any particular framework. That said, we do occasionally have partners who are interested in getting matched with fellows who do know a particular framework. So, for instance, we had a project this last semester that we matched two fellows with who submitted their code sample in JavaScript, but also had experience using Vue. VUE, making sure I'm saying that right, Vue. And the partner was really excited about that because they'd been using that in their technology for a while. And they were like, oh, we don't even need to get this person up to speed. They already know what they're doing. So your code sample does not need to have any particular framework or any particular technology, but we may come to you and ask, hey, do you have any proficiency in this particular thing or that particular thing? We think you'd be a good fit for this project. And we'd love to know what you already know versus what would we need to get you up to speed on. All right. And with that, we are right on the hour by my clock. So I'm going to bring us to a close. If we didn't get to your question, please feel free to email us at fellowship@mlh.io. We'll be more than happy to answer your questions. As I said, all of you will be getting an email with the slides, the links, and a link to this video once it goes up on YouTube. So we are ready to share all of this great information with all of you. Omar, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, thank you so much, guys, for being here. Hopefully, we answered all of your questions or most of them. If you have any more questions, as Amanda said, send them over to us over the email or in the Discord channel. Wei is doing really great job there. He's answering most of the questions, and he's a really great guy. So shout out to him. And yeah, thank you so much, guys.
Have a good one. Bye, everybody.